Okay, dear colleagues, we can now move to item 16, follow-up to the recommendations of the external auditor's report on the governance of UNESCO and the dependent funds, programs, and entities, document 30AC/23. Dear colleagues, as you may already know, this item is included on our agenda pursuant to Decision 11.com/7, with which we requested the Secretariat to include it on the agenda for the current session. Let me give the floor to Mr. Curtis, who will provide us with more information in relation to this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. As mentioned by the Chairperson, this item is included on the agenda of the session at the request of the committee last year, with a view to include it on the agenda of the 7th session of the General Assembly of States Parties in June. You may also recall a number of recommendations by the external auditor in document 38C/23 were already discussed by the committee, namely at its 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th sessions, and by the General Assembly of State Parties at its 5th and 6th sessions. As a detailed table was presented last year, the document this year is brief. The document presents the recommendation of Subgroup 2, responsible for examining the structure, composition, and methods and work of UNESCO's international and intergovernmental bodies concerning the 2003 Convention. In particular, this subgroup recommended that the governing bodies of the 2003 Convention strengthen the decision-making procedures and credibility of the committee. The subgroup also took note of a good practice that it initiated to develop an overall results framework for the Convention. Please note that the document was drafted before the 39th session of the General Conference of UNESCO. The draft decision suggests that the committee takes note of the recommendation and good practice regarding the 2003 Convention presented by the Subgroup 2, which was examined by the Executive Board and the General Conference of UNESCO. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for this very useful information. I will now open the floor. I recognize the distinguished delegate from Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to provide additional information, last month the UNESCO General Conference adopted 131 recommendations of the open-ended working group on governance. The Philippines had the honor to co-chair its 2 subgroups over the last biennium, with the distinguished delegate of Hungary. Subgroup 2 took up the UNESCO international and intergovernmental bodies, including the 2003 Convention bodies. In accordance with the resolution of the General Conference, all UNESCO governing bodies, including the ICH Committee, General Assembly, and their secretariats, are requested to follow up on implementation of relevant general and specific recommendations of the Working Group on Governance. In our view, the following recommendations of the Working Group are among those that should be considered. Recommendation 60 on the need to reduce and manage politicization of nominations and decisions. 61 and 62 on effective information dissemination and documentation. 64 on open-ended informal consultations on draft decisions. Numbers 66 to 72 on clarifying and harmonizing the role of bureaus and responsibilities of bureau members, including timely dissemination of reports of meetings and reinforcing their intergovernmental nature and transparency. Number 73 on gender-neutral language. Number 76 on orientation sessions for new members. Number 94 on equitable resource allocation. Number 96 on synergies with other cultural conventions. Number 97 on better utilizing the annual meeting of chairpersons of the cultural conventions. Of special interest mentioned by Mr. Curtis is recommendation number 107, addressed specifically to the 2003 Convention and governing bodies on, quote, the need to strengthen decision-making procedures and credibility of the committee, taking due note of the ad hoc working group established to address these issues, end of quote. We encourage active follow-up of these recommendations, and we note that this has already been given to the informal ad hoc working group's mandate. We have submitted amendments to the draft decision in this regard, supported by other committee members. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippines. Now I give the floor to Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We also would like to thank the Secretariat for the report. However, the report and the draft decision does not fully reflect the decision of the last session of the General Conference regarding the recommendations of the ad hoc working group on governance. But as Mr. Curtis have mentioned, it was prepared before the General Conference, so that is understandable, and we are here to enrich the decision at this stage. And after 2 years of intense work among all UNESCO member states, we believe it is now time both for the Secretariat as well as the state parties to implement the relevant recommendations. We're not going to dwell in detail on the issue, as it has already been very eloquently put forward by our distinguished Philippines delegation, but we want to take the attention of the committee to some of the recommendations that are of importance to us. The first one being the role of the Bureau. It's one of the important areas that needs attention, and the other is the synergies among the culture conventions. We are glad that the informal working group is given mandate to implement relevant recommendations of the working group on governance under agenda item 13. We expect from the Secretariat also to start implementing those recommendations that are under its responsibility. As a colleague from Philippines have mentioned, together with Philippines, Algeria and Hungary, we have some amendment proposals for the draft decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Turkey. Any other further comments? No. Let us move now to the decision. Please refer to document 16 and this draft decision in para 6. We see it on screens with some amendments. Let us proceed para by para. Para 1 is a procedural one. Seeing no objection, adopted. Para 2, no objection, adopted. New para 3, put forward by Philippines, Algeria, Hungary, Turkey. Welcoming the adoption by the UNESCO General Conference at this 39th session of the recommendations of the open-ended working group on the governance, procedure, and the methods of work of the governing bodies of UNESCO. Seeing no objection, adopted. Para 4, original text, original language. Seeing no objection, para 4 adopted. Para 5, at the end of the sentence, some addition by Philippines, Algeria, Hungary, Turkey, identified by the working group on governance. Any comments or questions, objections? No. Para 5 is adopted as amended. New para 6 by Philippines, Algeria, Hungary, Turkey. Invite the Secretariat to implement relevant recommendations of the working group on governance. Secretariat, no problem. No objections. So new para 6 adopted. New para 7 by same proposals. Invite the Bureau to conduct its work in accordance with the guiding principles and the responsibilities of representative of electoral groups in bureaus, annexed as Appendix 2 in the recommendations of the open-ended working group on governance, adopted at the 39th session of the General Conference. Para 7, adopted. Para 8, I don't know when and where is Turkey, Philippines, Algeria, Hungary have met and have discussed and have produced such a nice paras together. Invite also the informal ad hoc working group to take up relevant recommendations of the working group on governance that may require further discussion before appropriate implementation, such as on the role of the Bureau. Okay, Algeria.
Just a slight amendment, Mr. President. Tout à l'heure, je pense qu'on a mis open-ended au nom du groupe informel. C'est juste pour être... je pense que la Hongrie avait présenté un amendement pour changer le nom du groupe informel ad hoc en disant open-ended, je pense. C'est juste pour avoir la bonne terminologie.
Para 7 was from the earlier previous paras also. Official working group name. Open-ended informal ad hoc working group. Okay, Hungary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm asking also as a rapporteur, which language, which language is the authoritative? I'm following the English. The English seems to be following what the distinguished delegate from Algeria says, but I'm not sure that the French is following up on that as well. Thank you.
Secretariat assured us that a little later automatically translate from original English version to French version. So, and later rapporteur will check. So focus on English version. So, para 8. The change of official name of working group. So, Turkey.
Well, I just have an editorial problem. Maybe we could ask Secretariat, because in para 8 we have formulated working group on the governance, but in para 9 we have labeled open-ended working group on the governance. I think for the sake of consistency we should have been more careful, but I cannot recall exactly which one is the official. Either we adopt open-ended working group on the governance, or we leave it in both para working group on the governance. Maybe our chair Philippines could help us here. Thank you.
I think without the Philippines, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. They're both referring to the same thing, but the official name is, of course, the longer one, which is a mouthful. But so we put working group on the governance just to simplify. So, but if we want to be consistent, yes, we could use the same, or on the understanding that we're referring to the same thing, we could also maybe keep. But thank you very much, and also for the support of colleagues for these amendments.
Okay, some with depth clarification by Philippines. Every committee member can agree on new para 8 and 9. 8 first. 8, seeing no objection, new para 8.
They want us to align the name. We'll align the name.
Align the name. Okay, 8, para 8 is adopted. Para 9. Seeing no objection, para 9 also is adopted. We have now adopted each of the paras, and we need to adopt the decision as a whole. Seeing no objection, I therefore declare decision 12.com/16 adopted as amended. Two more.